And I think we are live streaming. Hello, everybody. It feels like it's been 2 weeks since we've been here. Has it been 2 weeks?
Yep, been 2 weeks.
Been 2 weeks. Been 2 weeks. We're so glad y'all been patient with us. We've been through a couple things, and I'm glad I'm feeling better. I just want to say right now, I'm just so glad I'm feeling better, and looking forward to what Terry has got in store for us tonight. And we want to say we appreciate everybody. I got one button to push over here, and now I can say it. We appreciate everybody who's listening on Power Faith Radio tonight. We thank you so much for coming, spending some time with us. While you're there, if you'll look, there's a new little button on the app there that you're watching with, and it will give you the link to come into the Zoom room. So we was able to put that on there, and we appreciate you coming on over if your phone has that capability. I know it takes a little bit to navigate that, and but anyway, the link is there. Also, you can come over to our YouTube channel, Outreach Noah, and while you're there, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then hit that notification bell. You'll be notified every time a new video goes up. Or come on over to a Simple Walk Facebook page. You can also send an email to outreachnoah@gmail.com. Terry, how you doing?
Scotty, you said more than I thought you would.
I've got a cough drop in my mouth, so I'm doing pretty good right now.
Well,
So
it is glad to hear you're doing better, because when you called me Monday, I was at Home Depot after work picking up a few things, and you sounded pretty rough.
I was still squeaking pretty good. Squeaking pretty good.
Yeah, and you messaged last night and said you'd got a lot of your voice, but that was a big turnaround just from Monday night.
Yeah,
and I'm glad to hear you are doing better.
I think it was just my body recuperating. I still had some head drainage, but my vocal cords, I just couldn't get them to work, and everybody around here loved it.
Like Pam and Annie got to take a vacation, didn't they?
Yeah.
There you go. All right. As Scotty says, greetings everyone here in the Zoom room, YouTube channel, and Power Faith Radio. And just thank everyone for being patient with us. Illness sounded like the thunder that's been rolling through here lately.
It did sound like thunder.
We have had a lot of storms run through here, like it has most of the other part of the country. So, of course, we've fared well down here, but when these storms do blow in, they blow in these little bugs that we have a tendency to catch. And I think Scotty and quite a few people up in his neck of the woods, as we say here in Tennessee, got hit. Sounded like it was going to hit around us too. We had several people at work that had the exact same symptoms as you and your family, and Thomas and others has had last week. And I was like, oh my days, here it comes. I figured you're going to end up getting well, and then I was going to It hit one of the departments at work. It didn't, thank goodness it didn't hit ours. We was able to keep going on and everything. So I don't think it hit us down here as hard as it did you, but it was going around down here.
So my brother-in-law, he didn't get it, and he just said he's paying the right preacher. I don't know what that means, but
so he's bribing somebody.
He's bribing somebody. I don't know. That's something they used to say all the time.
All righty. Well, again, greetings, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us. And tonight we're going to continue on in our journey into Genesis. We're going to be covering the passages there. I think it's 20, chapter 1, verse 20 through 23. I think is what I had down. It's not very long tonight. It's the fifth day. I'm going to my source tonight will be Rabbi Hirsch's Chumash on Genesis again, as I've been using a lot. He breaks down. He does a lot of good stuff on verse 20 itself. It's going to be the main coverage tonight, Scotty. So we may run a little short on it, but if we've got any questions or anything that's come in over the last several weeks that we can discuss, we'll have time for that tonight.
Okay.
Because next week, when we get into the sixth day, you're not going to want to miss it, because there's going to be some things we're going to cover that's going to discuss, and I'm going to show you where specifically one particular passage has been misinterpreted wrong doctrines made out of it, just a lot of hooey's been made out of it. But when you get into the Hebrew and get into the passage, we're going to see the truth of the text and as it stands on its own and what we're going to see. And so, especially when we're getting into the sixth day, and on the seventh day, we've got things we're going to be covering. That's going to be some really, really good. Bring your notepads, and even tonight, if you've got your notepads tonight, we've got a few things you may want to jot down as we're going through classes. If I go too fast and you need me to repeat anything, just shoot Scotty hey, have him back up, cover this again, and I'll be glad to do so. But the fifth day is kind of just a few chapters. Most of our studies are going to be coming out of one particular verse tonight, because I really liked how Rabbi Hirsch broke down the certain aspects of that verse in the words and discussed them. And it's most of it's a lot of really interesting knowledge stuff. Because once you start seeing how the creation week, what God did with it. I actually seen something in the creation week that I had never seen before as I was studying for this. And we got to the fifth day, he brings out an element that I'll be bringing out tonight that I find very, very interesting, that enlightens a little bit more on what God did during the creation week and the things he did and how he worked creation. And it's just really interesting. So we're glad you'd be here tonight. Again, tonight we're going to be covering Genesis chapter 1, verses 20 through 23, I believe it is, the fifth day. We're going to be discussing the fifth day of creation. Scotty, you ready?
I am ready. I am ready. So I want to, and I didn't get to talk to Terry about this, but starting next month, we're going to do a little something different on our Tzedakah time, and you'll really want. I'll kind of announce it next week, and what we're going to do on that. But we're going to start it off tonight. We're first going to go through our list of people who have been sent to us to give tzedakah for, and then we're going to center around our blessed memory. And what we want to do is dedicate the class tonight, the meeting, to our blessed memory list. And so those are the ones that's real important. We're going to be giving tzedakah for those to their merit. So, okay, let's get right into it. As always, we start off giving tzedakah for our main teacher and his wife. That's Pesach and Shira Sherbo. They live in Sfat, Israel. And then also we're giving tzedakah tonight for Larry Heath. Larry Heath, he contacted us over the weekend and asked if we could give tzedakah for him. And then also we still have Nadine Akins on our tzedakah list. And Janice Brandon, did I get that right? Ronald, great. And she's on our tzedakah list. And Harleen Houle is on our tzedakah list. She's going tomorrow to have a pacemaker put in, so let's remember her. Also on our tzedakah list is Wendell and Mary Parsons. We've got them on our tzedakah list. And then someone always asks us to put on the list Amuela Asher, and so we're giving tzedakah for her. And then Veronica Port, giving tzedakah there. And then Thomas Schaus. Now that tzedakah we just put in was put in proxy for you guys with your name on it. And then also we got on our tzedakah list tonight Ronald and his sister. Ronald, how are you doing, and how's your sister doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Finally got my appointment at the hospital next Monday, so hopefully something going there. My sister, not good. She's got an appointment today with her specialist and should have results of where they're at with her finally.
Okay.
Where they go from here.
Okay. We're going to give us her name again, Ronald. Just
Diane Benkia.
Yeah. Thank you, Ronald. And now we're going to move on to our blessed memory. And I actually pulled one over. I know it was a couple of weeks ago we give this, but I felt like keeping her on it. And then we've got two more is Margaret Peggy Logan. We blessed memory. We're giving that for her merit. And then also Harold Bringman. I believe I pronounced that right. We're giving blessed memory tzedakah for Harold. And then also Gary Heath. Gary Heath was on our tzedakah list. And then He left this walk of life uh, uh, 2 weeks ago, and so we've moved him up to our blessed memory Sadaq list. And we're also dedicating this class tonight to Margaret and Harold and Gary. May it go to their merit. And sorry, guys, you'll have to give me just a minute here. There's something going on with my computer. That's not supposed to happen. That's not supposed to happen. I know y'all are hearing stuff back there. That's not supposed to happen. Just in case you was wondering, that was not supposed to happen. Hold on just a minute. We are going to pray. We are going to pray. So, all right. All right. Let's pray. I feel really good about being here. I missed everybody. So let's pray tonight. Hear our voice, Adonai, our God, Father of mercy. Have compassion on us and accept our prayers with compassion and favor. For we know that you are a God who hears prayers and supplications. You are our King. We ask that you do not send us away empty-handed. Favor us. We ask that you answer us and listen to our prayers. Amen. All right, Terry, are you ready to take it away?
Yeah, just hold on a second.
Okay.
Had a thought as you was bringing something I want to go back and look up later.
Okay.
What's to do kind of with what you were doing. It has nothing to do with anything separate. It's
Okay.
just, I'd say what it is, but I want to confirm. It's been a while, so I want to confirm it, and it's something we can share with people as well.
Okay, Terry.
Probably next week.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker view, and I'm gonna mute and put you on speaker view, and you go right ahead.
All right. Well, like I said, greetings to everyone, and thank you again for being here with us at Outreach Noah. Scotty, do we have anything we need to probably go back and touch on, or anything that's come in over the last several weeks since we've been gone? We can, like I said, it may end up being a little shorter tonight.
We do have a couple of things to discuss. We'll wait and see if those I think you're going to get into those tonight. I think sometimes when you're dealing with this a text day by day, verse by verse, people have this concept in their mind of what's taking place. And and I think you're going to cover some of that tonight before we get into next week's on the sixth day. But I think I'll be able to formulate those questions to fit what you bring tonight, and then we can discuss that. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Like I said, we're going to be covering Genesis chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. I'll just go ahead and read those. I'm going to be reading these from the Samson R. Hirsch Chumash on Genesis. Verse 20 says, God said, let the water swarm with living things that move, and let birds fly over the earth before the vault of the sky. And remember, Rabbi Hirsch, as we covered earlier on the firmament, he translates the word that's translated as firmament as a vault. And we covered that when we discussed that on the day that he created the firmament. And you can go back on YouTube and pick up those classes there and see where we discussed the firmament and why he translates it as the vault. But anyhow, let the birds fly over the earth before the vault of the sky. Verse 21, and so it was God who created the great families of fish and all the life of every small creature that moves, with which the water swarmed according to their species, and every winged bird according to its species. And God saw that it was good. Verse 22, and God blessed them as follows: be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, but the birds are to multiply on the earth. And evening and morning was the fifth day. Rabbi Hirsch starts out. He talks about this is the part what I found very interesting. So I will probably go slow, and I may go back and repeat some of this a little bit. So if you want to take some notes, this is a really a good place here to take some notes on what he is revealing here. Rabbi Hirsch goes on. He says the first 3 days of creation are related to the 3 days that follow. The first 3 days of creation are related to the 3 days that follow. The light was created on the first day, was on the fourth day assigned its light bearers. Okay, on the first day, light was created, but on the fourth day, the luminaries, which bear the duty of the light, was given to them, from which it can influence terrestrial life and growth. The expanse of the water and air created on the second day, the expanses of the water and the air created on the second day were on the fifth day given their world of life. The dry land which emerged and was adorned with vegetation on the third day received its living inhabitants on the sixth day. So we'll go over this again. This is really interesting. The 3 days of creation are related to the 3 days that follow. On the fourth day, the light bearers, the luminaries, from which it can influence terrestrial life on earth, was given. And so light was given its bearer. That it's the physical part of the creation that was going to carry the duty of bearing the light. The expanses of water and air created on the second day, where on the fifth day was given their world of life. So God gave, where water and air was created on the second day, on the fifth day, they received, the water and the air received the life that would live within it. As the luminaries would bear the light, now the water and air would bear the life of the fifth day. The dry land which emerged and was adorned with vegetation on the third day, on the sixth day, received its inhabitants. And he goes on to say, then the seventh day marks the beginning of a new world in which man is to be educated to God. This day, too, is a first day, but on a higher level. On this day, spiritual light was created, the light of recognition of God. But its fourth day is lacking. It lacks light bearers. There's no bearers of the spiritual light of the sixth day. Only in the creation of Israel, the eighth work of creation, did the spiritual light too receive its bearer. And as we get into the sixth day, we're going to learn. A lot of people want to go to the sixth day and say God commanded the Sabbath. No, he created it, but there's no commandment there. And we're going to see that when we look in the Hebrew. The seventh day. It was when God created Israel the priesthood, and at Mount Sinai, in Leviticus 23, he gives the Sabbath its bear. That's the reason why you and I, if we try to observe the Sabbath, we're not going to be able to observe it because we were not given the duty to bear the light, the spiritual light of Sabbath. Only Israel does that. So like the sun and the moon bears the light of the great light, of the light that was created on the first day, so does Israel bear the light of the Sabbath. And that's what he's talking about. Only in the creation of Israel, the eighth work of creation, did the spiritual light to receive its bear. Like the land bears the animals, the waters in the air bears the living creatures that are to flow in them, and the luminaries bears the light. On the seventh day, there was the light of the recognition of God was given, but it wasn't until Israel, because it wasn't given throughout humanity, but it was given unto Israel at Mount Sinai that they would become the light bearers of that creation, the part of the creation. God, in his creation, what is so interesting, first 3 days, he creates everything. In the next 3 days, he fulfills who's going to bear the duties of those creation of that first 3 days. I found that a very, very interesting aspect of creation that I hadn't seen before until Rabbi Hirsch brings this out. With the fifth day, we enter the world of the living creatures. I wrote down here in my notes dealing with the others, says, God created Israel on the 6th of Sivan, the sign of the giving of the Torah, the light of God's education. The Torah is the light of God's education. And so it was given to Israel. And that's when he says here that the Sabbath, or the seventh day, is a day in which man is educated to God, which means Israel carries the duty to educate man and carry the light of the recognition of God. That's why there's so many prophecies. It points to that. Zechariah 23, when all the nations are going to turn to the Jewish people and say, hey, teach us about God. Isaiah chapter 2 deals with the same thing, when the nations will be coming to Israel, to the Mount of God. And they said, we're going to learn his ways and walks in his paths. All of that, Isaiah chapter 2, Zechariah chapter 8, bears the truth of what Rabbi is saying here, in that Israel bears the education of God and the light of the recognition of God. They are the bearers of the seventh day. And that light is going to stand there to be the light unto the world. They're to show us the paths and the ways of God. And I found that very, very interesting on how the mechanical workings of the creation week. I've never seen that. 3 days, he brought all this in the next 3 days. And then later on with Israel, he supplies each creation with its physical part of life. So he goes on down where he talks about the crawling creatures. The Hebrew word for the crawling creatures has a meaning that means vigorously driving movement. It denotes an overcoming of external obstacles. It means that something that is capable of independent movement, a living thing, an independent movement that is identifying mark of all life. See, before when we were talking about the plant life, it does not have independent movement. They're stationary. Trees are stationary. Grass is stationary. Grapevines is stationary. Corn stalks are stationary. And they have a life, but it's a different form of life. God is bringing into the creation the next level of higher life, one that has independent movement. And this independent movement is an identifying mark of its life. When we see a spider that crawls, when we see a worm that as we say, worms, and we see animals that move, that movement is an identifying marker that it is alive, and it comes from the Hebrew word that is used here that is translated as crawling creatures. The next, he deals with the word that is translated as being, where he says here, and let the water swarm with living things that move, and the birds that fly over the earth, and the vault of the sky. This word is translated as beings, and it is the word nephesh. Because it's, let me see if I go back over here to the Hebrew. Nephesh chai. These creatures, where it says living things here in the English, or living beings in some other translation, those words is nephesh chai, which is also can be translated directly as a living soul, or a soul that lives. So all the animals, the creatures, everything, God called them a soul that lives, or a living soul. It's translated as beings. The nephesh is the inner cause of such movement. The nephesh is the inner cause of such movement. The nephesh is related to a word that is nefetz. It means to be spread out. So the word it's related to means to be spread out, which this means to be completely detached from the body of earth. The nephesh, though it's part of the living body, it's what gives life and what gives movement to this body. It's also detached from it. He goes on and says, the nephesh is the very essence of a living thing. Its individual essence in the absolute independence. The nephesh is also the source of all movement. And it also means will, like a person's will. It has the meaning of the will. So he said it also means will. For the inner will, it says, for the will is the inner source of all movement. So the will, when the nephesh within the living animals wills to move, then the body reacts. It is the very source of movement. A creature possessing a nephesh is a self-contained individual, and on a higher level is a personality. The nephesh, the creature that is possessing a nephesh, is a self-contained individual on a higher level, is a personality. It is separate. Well, I'm going to say the nephesh is the intangible element in every living being. The nephesh is the intangible element of every living thing. It is separate from the material and does not integrate with the material. This is why when we know that when the animals, when they die, their nephesh goes back into the earth from where it came. And we'll see that later on as we study Genesis. And jumping ahead, but when the human being passes, its nephesh goes back to the Creator, because that's where the nephesh came from. The animal's nephesh comes from the earth because they brought forth living things. But when we get into the sixth day, we're going to get a little bit more into this, God willing, next week. That's why I'm saying y'all want to get some front row seats next week. We're going to have a good time, Scotty. So it is, the nephesh is separated from the material and does not integrate with the material. It is, the nephesh says, make sure I don't skip this. Were the nephesh merely a part of the material, the identity of the individual would dissolve with the constant change of the material. Found this interesting. If your nephesh was actually part of your material, then your nephesh was change as the material of your body would change. And it kind of makes sense. How many folks out here, like Scotty and many of us that have reached some age, and we inside, we think, man, we still feel like I'm 25. We have those 25 thoughts, 30-year-old thoughts. But my body, it's operating at 110. That's because the nephesh is not connected to the body. That's why the nephesh does not bear the essence of the age of the body and the ailments of the body, because it's separate. It's not connected. It's part of it, but it's not connected. Rabbi Hirsch goes on and says, this proves the existence of a permanent element amidst the changing material of the body. I want to say this again. This proves the existence of a permanent element amidst the changing material of the body. This element receives and retains impressions and thereby is responsible for the continued existence of the individual. So, Scotty, I got one of those little boxes that everybody has been talking about in this new update. All right. Understand this. Thereby, this nephesh is responsible for the continued existence of the individual. That means when the material is gone, the nephesh continues the existence of the individual. The material does not carry the existence of the individual, the nephesh does. And all this is in the fifth day, what we're learning about. He goes on, he says, the nephesh is the inner identifying mark that distinguishes an animal from a plant. Just as individual movement is the outer sign. Individual movement that the nephesh is having the material do is an outer sign that we are different from the plants. The inner sign is that our existence never ends, though the material may end. When the plant dies, it dies completely. But when the part of the creation that God puts in a nephesh, there is a continued existence, even when the material passes. He goes on and says, the nephesh is the animal soul's center point in which the whole existence is concentrated. Should this center point be harmed, the whole animal is harmed. A plant, on the other hand, is not a single whole unit closed around about one center. It consists of a number of individual parts joining together. In every part, in every branch, in every leaf, in every bud, the existence of the whole is repeated, so that if separated, almost every part can reproduce the whole. But the nephesh is chaya. It's living. The Hebrew word for life is chai. Chaya is living. It is capable of distinguishing between good and bad, accepting what is compatible to it and rejecting what is not compatible. This free activity assimilating compatible elements and rejecting incompatible elements is the essential life function. With the crawling creatures, the beings that are all alike, it says movement, will, and differentiation are essential signs of life. Showing life, nephesh, the underlying principle of life and the activity of life and the process of life. So the nephesh shows us the activity of life and the process of life. And this is what is happening on the fifth day of creation. That when God was instilling the nephesh upon the earth and the living creatures. Like I said, we'll get more into the part with man on the sixth day. Scotty, anything before I go to the next point? Or to the next word?
Okay, so let's back up just for a minute and so I want to put this out a little. Thomas has asked a question here. I want to put this out a little differently and deeper if I can. So what we're talking about is that animals, nephesh.
It's NEF, I think, ISH. I can't remember. It's been a while since I actually just said. I can read it in the Hebrew actually. See, it's noon pei shin nephesh.
So what is that? Is that different than the soul that we have from the Creator? Is that the same? What is the differentiation? Do we have a nephesh as well as a soul, or is it one? How does that cover?
We're going to get into that on the sixth day.
Okay. Tighten up your
but
boots.
a basic answer is yes. Nephesh chai, living being. When I have to go back and look at the Hebrew, but when the Creator made man and he became a living soul, I believe it is the Hebrew nephesh chai. So okay. I'll be more into that next week when we get to it, because I know we're going to, next week may go into 2 weeks. I don't know. There's quite a bit on the sixth day. So, but we will be getting into that next week, God willing.
Okay. I'm going to put you back on speaker view.
No. All right. The next word in the passage where it says swarm, that they're going to swarm. He says it's interesting that this can also be translated or can be interpreted into two ways: as a transitive verb and as a transitive verb and an intransitive verb, meaning that the waters shall put forth living things that move, or living beings that move, or shall swarm in the waters. Understanding the waters are bringing forth these things. And the fowl that fly about. The word is very interesting here, that we get the word fowl from in the Hebrew. It has related words to it that means to engage in tiring work to strive or to labor. So the words here that are talks about flying about, fowl that fly about, comes from relating words that means to engage in tiring work, to strive or to labor. It's also in relation to the word that is translated as tired. The word fowl says the eye can barely perceive the repeating movements of the wings. The meaning of fowl, like bird, then is to strive and to advance without let up, as opposed to one who walks and who advances step by step. It also has the meaning of to be filled with water or air. For a bird fills its body, lungs, and bones with air, and only thus is able to glide through the air. And at the creation of the inhabitants of water and air, we do not find the scriptural comment, and it was so, like he did with other aspects of the creation. But with the bird, or with the animals of the sea and the animals of the air, he does not say, and it was so. So it refers to the present condition as seen as today. It is only of those creations, when he says, and it is so, it is only of those creations that form and fill the habitation of man, and so are primary objects of his observation. But he doesn't say that with the animals of the water and the animals of the sea. In verse 21, he says, so it was God who created the great families of the fish and all of the life and all their creatures and that move, with which the water swarmed according to their species, and the winged birds according to their species. God saw that it was good. So here again, we have God distinguishing the word according to species, which we discussed earlier in verses 11 and 12. If you want to go back to the passage when we're discussing Genesis chapter 1, verses 11 and 12, about according to kind, according to species. But what is another interesting aspect of this passage is that for the second time, God uses the word bara. And God created it. And it says here in the Hebrew, Vayi bara Elohim. And the word bara, and we're going to go over and look at this in the Artscroll, talks about this passage pretty well that I wanted to cover. When it says bara, this is the only time that bara is used is when God is creating something from nothing. After Genesis chapter 1, generally when it talks about the Creator forming and making, he's using the elements that he created on the first day. When he brought all the elements into existence, that was through bara, from something from nothing. So here the Creator is telling us again. So God created, he bara something from nothing, the great families of fish and all the life and the small creatures that moves and the water that swarmed and also the winged birds of the skies. And we'll go over here to the Artscroll and discuss this passage here where he's talking about the word bara. Rabbi Hirsch doesn't really get into the depth there. He moves on to another particular word. Abranal, one of the great Torah scholars and sages of Israel, says, as cited above, like in verse 1, the word bara notes that this is the first time since the first day that created is used. This is the first time since the first day that the word created is used. It denotes, that something fundamentally new came into being. Something new came into being on the fifth day that didn't exist in the 4 days before. Because this is a second bara. And what he created on this fifth day did not exist from the 4 days before. He says, in this case, it stresses the unprecedented magnitude of the fish's size when they're talking about the great fish of the sea, the great fish of the sea. He created also applies to living souls. Up until the fifth day, there was not a living soul on the earth. So when he brought this in, the nephesh, on the fifth day, when he created, he bara on the fifth day, the souls of the animal kingdom, this was a new creation that didn't exist. The inherent potential of each part of the universe was created on the first day, but each was established on the day when it was commanded, let there be luminaries. Nevertheless, the word created is used here because the water which germinated the living beings was endowed on the first day with the potential to produce only bodies of the living things. So the water only produced the potential to produce the bodies of the living things, but not the potential to produce their living soul. So we have here on the fifth day a new creation. This creation from something from nothing of the life potential came from God alone, who added the necessary forces, and it is therefore ascribed only to him, because it says, Vayibara Elohim, on this fifth day, he created the soul of the living creatures that came forth from the water and came forth from the sky. Because of their great size, the Torah is talking about the great size of the fishes. Of their great size, the Torah specifically ascribes the creatures of the sea giants to God, who stressed that they too were created from naught, that there was these great fishes of the sea. And some of the Hebrew and some of the things I was reading talks about these humongous great sea creatures, and they were created from nothing. They were part of that bara Elohim. And again, here we see in this passage, after their kind. More commonly, however, after their kind is interpreted as the injunction that living beings proliferate within their own species. God said to them, every species shall cleave to its own king. Other species are prohibited to it. The laws prohibited the mixing of species. And it was morning and evening, and was the fifth day. I found the fifth day to be very, very interesting as I dug into it. We learned, just to recap, we learned that the fourth, the third, fourth, and the fourth, fifth, and the sixth each had aspects given to the earth to bear what God created on the first 3 days. What God did on the first 3 days, the next 3 days, God created the inhabitants of those specific areas. Where when he created the water and the air, then he had the fish and the seas. And when he created light to distinguish day and night, he gave light and darkness its bearers, the moon and the sun. And then on the sixth day, he doesn't give it exactly at that point. He gives it at Sinai when he gives the spiritual light of the Sabbath, the day of educating to God, to the Jewish people or Israel at Mount Sinai. And that's why God says he gave the Sabbath as a gift to them. They are the bearers of the sixth day. And so when we see that, it is so interesting. And then we come into the animals, and we're talking about he brought forth this soul in the earth that had not existed since the first day. It was a new creation that only the water and only the air could bring forth the bodies. And then therefore out of nothing, God brings forth this nephesh for the animals. And we're going to see something very similar to that on the sixth day. You ready, Scotty? Scotty zoned out. There he is.
Realize I had so many buttons. Am I muted?
No. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm unmuted.
What'd you say?
Okay. So I was looking over while you was covering this a couple of notes that I think you and I had went through the class that Jacob Scharft, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, a few years back. Wasn't that you and I went through that?
We went through a class with him, yes.
And so anyway, I'm really challenging everybody to hold what you have said this week, and next week is going to give some great clarity to this situation, to this building block. Can I call it that?
Yeah, it's building because it's only the fifth day. He's not done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, isn't it amazing what we've learned? There's a whole lot more there that we could get into, but what we've learned on the base principles of each of the days of creation has, like I said, when we just look at through it through translation, we really don't get the whole picture. But when we start going back to the language and to the words that God used when he told Moses to write these things down and what they mean and what the nation of Israel, whom it's its native language, he gave them his Torah in the language of their language and of the language that he spoke to, creation into being. And now we're able to go and to learn from them, some of the base things of creation, the base things of living and what God wants, and desires. And it's so amazing.
So I have a question. And it's really not discussing the information that you produced tonight or you have been producing, but what it discusses is what makes these commentaries that you are using the one. What makes these commentaries the importance of the information? I mean, why can't we use any commentary that man has produced? What makes these commentaries in this presentation the necessity? What makes it the best to get it out of?
I'm going to use for the beginning of this the words of King David. Psalms 147, starting in verse 19 and 20. Psalms 147, 19, 20. King David says, he proclaimed his words to Yaakov, to Jacob, his statutes and his judgments to Israel. He has not done so for any nation, and his judgments they have not known. Okay, so we're going to listen to people who don't know the judgments nor the words of God and listen to their interpretations. Or are we going to go to Jacob and to Israel, who God gave these words to, who gave these meanings to, and let them tell us?
Yeah.
You know, are we going to go to a John Deere lawnmower mechanic and have him work on our Mercedes-Benz? Because the John Deere mechanic doesn't receive the teachings on how to repair a Mercedes. But the mechanics that receive how to work on the Mercedes, they have the right to tell you what the parts are and how it works. And it's just, I'm just using this as an analogy. God gave the words of Torah to Israel at Mount Sinai on the 6th of Sivan, on what's called Shavuot. He gave them that. He says it's their heritage. They are given to be guardians of it. They have read it in its original language. They have studied it in its original language for 3,400 years. So we're going to have a Johnny-come-lately read an English or Spanish or Portuguese version and tell us what it means. Or do we go to the source? When we read the prophecies, we find out that only Israel has the right and has the duty. They were given the duty to teach mankind. So now the next question, well, why haven't they? Well, for the last 2,000 years, every time they opened their mouth out, they got shot at, they got killed, they got put in concentration camps. So they withdrew. But something happened about 30-something years ago on this planet. There was a fracture, there was a crack in this to where you and I, the people of the nations, woke up one day and we started approaching them and saying, just like it says in Zechariah 8:23, take us with you because we know God's with you. Jeremiah, it's either 49 or 16, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it's in Jeremiah, talks about that there's going to come a day when the nations are going to look to the Creator and say, that our fathers have taught us lies and everything has been naught. We're talking about the nations throughout the centuries. And so the proof is in the Torah and in the prophets that they are the one. And so that's where I go. And I've been studying now since I got into studying the Hebrew scriptures in 2002. It intensified in about 2008, 2009. I started studying under the rabbis and learning. And I still study. I have Scotty and I have our main teacher who lives in Israel. And we have other rabbis that we seek guidance from when we have questions. I've got a Jewish friend of mine who's a Levite who lives in New Jersey. When I've got a question on a certain word, sometimes in just my general just reading, I'll shoot him a text and a picture of the passage in Hebrew underlined with the word. I said, hey, explain this to me in your language. And when he does, then it opens up what is being said in the English. And so, but yeah, that's the reason why the Hebrew and why the rabbis are the one. Because they're trained. The Orthodox rabbis, they're the ones who's trained in the language, in the traditions, and in the customs of the Torah that's been passed down since Moses. Matter of fact, in Exodus chapter 19 tells us a whole lot. When God tells Moses in Exodus chapter 19, I was going to say verse 22, but I don't think it's verse 22. But anyhow, you can go back to Exodus 19 and look at this. He tells Moses, I come to you and I speak to you in the cloud, that these people will believe in you forever. That's the words of God, not mine. The reason why the Jewish people cling to these traditions and customs and knowledge of Torah for 3,400 years is because God himself said, I speak to you, Moses, in the cloud, that this people will be leaving you forever. Not part-time, not when somebody new comes by. No, forever. Moses is our teacher. We say Moshe Rabbeinu in the Hebrew. Even for us, the Gentiles, Moses is our teacher. We learn of him through his teachers. And so that's why it's the one.
All right.
Hope I explained that okay.
Yeah. And we'll get
more into that as we go along.
Yes. All right, Terry. Been 1 hour.
I figured I was going to fall short on that because I generally read too fast, just to be honest. And to me, I do, I feel.
You done good. You done good. I'm going to bring us to a close. All righty.
All righty.
We want to thank everybody who's joined us tonight. Those of you listening on Power Faith Radio, thank you so much. Just want to let you know you can go over to our Facebook page, which is called A Simple Walk. Excuse me. And there you can find all of our links to the YouTube channel and also to the Zoom room. While you're over there checking out the YouTube channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. You'll be notified every time a new video goes up. And you can always come into the Zoom room and join us in the live Zoom meeting. And if you have any questions, you can send them to outreachnoah@gmail.com. Did I cover everything?
I think you got it.
Okay.
Hey, I hope everybody has a great week and stay away from any bugs that these storms bring in. They don't do good.
Yeah.
May God be with you in your health.
Yes. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. Thank you for coming and spending time with us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.